How does your brain decide who we fall in love with? What I'm about to tell you cannot be found anywhere on the internet, because when you Google how to make someone fall in love, you either find scientific lab theories that don't work in real life, or personal stories that don't give you any real solutions. So if you watch this video till the end, your life will never be the same. Falling in love isn't just obsessive thoughts about someone. It's a process that gets into the human brain and body on a chemical level. As we all know, the feeling of being in love is regulated by dopamine, the chemical that gives us motivation and desire. And of course, this mechanism works far beyond romantic relationships. Your hobbies and passions also appeared because of dopamine. So think about your favorite pastime. Fishing, the gym, video games, or anything else. You fell in love with that hobby because you get dopamine from it. You enjoy both the process and the result. But it wasn't always like that. When you first walked into the gym, installed a game, or went fishing with your dad, your state was pretty neutral. You weren't deeply involved. You just decided to try it. You fell in love with your hobby gradually. Think back to that moment when you caught your first big fish, the day you saw abs in the mirror for the first time, or when you beat a strong opponent in a tough game. That was the beginning of changes in your hormonal system. With that first achievement, you got a powerful hormonal reward for your actions. And that was only the start. Many more rewards were waiting ahead. Soon, you might even become obsessed with what you do. That's why fishermen are willing to sit in mud and cold thousands of miles from home just to catch fish. That's why gamers spend thousands of dollars on games. That's why an athlete restricts himself in everything just to grow his bicep by half a centimeter. The funny thing is, these people with different patients can't understand each other because they have different sources of dopamine. A gamer doesn't get what's fun about fishing. To him, it's boring. A bodybuilder thinks gaming is pointless because it doesn't bring any benefits in real life. But in reality, the difference isn't that big. A fisherman spends $1,000 on gear. An athlete spends the same on supplement, and a gamer spends it on a new skin in a game. So every patient person sometimes takes their hobby way too seriously. They look a bit crazy, just like someone who's in love. But hobbies are easier than relationships. You can choose your hobbies wisely, so your dopamine sources give you both pleasure and real benefits. That's a healthy balance between fun and usefulness. But applying that same logic to relationships is completely unacceptable. Like, I'm here for some fun and a little bit of benefit. Why is it different? With a hobby, you have a dopamine switch. You control the process. So the fisherman decides when to fish. The athlete decides when to go to the gym. The gamer decides when to start playing. You choose when to engage in your hobby and which source of dopamine to use. But with a woman, it doesn't work like that at all. If you fall in love, you fall in love completely, head first. The dopamine switch is no longer in your hands, it's in hers. And you only realize this after some time when you feel you've fallen in love. It's pointless to lie to yourself that everything is under control. You've probably seen this. Your friend falls in love and says, "Bro, relax, I just like hanging out with her, nothing serious." But then your friend starts skipping the gym, stops playing online, doesn't want to go fishing anymore, and becomes indifferent to everything he used to enjoy. It looks like a loyal dog whining while waiting for its owner to come home and scratch it behind the ears. Watching your friend, you realize nothing is under control anymore. The neural pathways in the brain of a person in love get wired so fast that one specific woman becomes his main source of dopamine. Main source, that means he's trapped. From the moment on, he decides nothing. She decides whether he gets dopamine or not. You are not controlling the process is controlling you. Here is something interesting. Almost all relationship-related Google researches fall into three categories. First group. What do I do if she texts rarely, doesn't want a relationship, lost interest and left me? The man is losing. Dopamine withdrawal begins. Second group. How do I make her fall in love? How do I approach? How do I flirt? The man is searching for access to a dopamine source. And third group, the rarest one, what do I do if I lost attraction to her? Dopamine concentration dropped. Other questions barely interest anyone, probably not you either if you are new here. So the desire to get a huge dopamine hits from relationships isn't a natural setting of the mind. It's a learned distortion. In school, we could fall in love too, sure, but it wasn't that dramatic. A girl could be really cute to you, but you might not even talk to her once in a whole year. And it still felt nice in its own way. You fantasized, imagined situations, felt positive emotions. She could say no to hanging out. Yeah, it's fun, but then summer break came and you forgot. You were interested enough to dream, but not dependent enough to think about her non-stop and suffer. What changed since those school years? Why did falling in love stop being just a pleasant bonus? The truth is, there is a point of no return in love, a dopamine spike threshold. Once you cross it, you are never the same again. This happens with addicts all the time. Medical practice proves this line of dependency exists. If a person crosses a certain emotional and pleasure limit even. Once the chances of replace become extremely high. Meaning, if someone breaks through the love dopamine ceiling just once, the temptation to return to those feelings becomes enormous. And almost everyone has gone through this. At some point, we fell in love seriously, head over heels. The real problem is once the barriers are down and the threshold is passed, you crave higher and higher stakes. You develop a physical need to raise the stakes, to fall in love harder, deeper, crazier. The boundaries of normal got blurry, and madness started to feel like a fair price for pleasure. There is no universal vaccine against instant love. Worse, society doesn't protect you. It actually encourages your love-driven psychosis. You fall in love, friends congratulate you, mom smiles, so honey, I'm so happy for you. Dad gives you extra money so you can take your girlfriend to the movies. They are not to blame. They absorbed the same romantic nonsense from culture as everyone else. Long before you ever fell in love for real, you lived through hundreds of love dramas. Books, movies, TV shows, video games. In every story, you put yourself in the hero's place, emphasized, internationalized the situations, and built emotional preferences. Storytelling has caused humanity more damage than action movies or horror films ever could. A horror movie gives you an adrenaline spike followed by relief. That's a hormonal reinforcement. If it's not scary, there is no thrill. Over time, people start seeking adrenaline in real life. And that's it. But drama gradually turns a normal person into a psycho. Have you ever seen a romantic movie where, after being cheated on or dumped, the main guy shrugs and says, whatever. If she left, she wasn't valuable to me. Goodbye. No, you are never seen that. Your brain gets programmed in the exact opposite direction. You must suffer, chase, obsess, and no one else matters except the object of your obsession. So come on, you really think if you read 50 books and watch 100 movies where people walk on their hands instead of their feet, you won't eventually try it? Same thing here. After soaking your brain into romantic broth for years, at some point it will force you to latch onto some girl seriously. And that's it. Your old life is over. From that moment on, the main measure of a woman's value becomes her ability to give you dopamine. You'll want to fall in love like crazy and won't settle for less. A lot of people don't understand what's going on with relationships for pleasure. They think, just pick a woman who's pretty on the outside and good on the inside, and boom, everything is perfect. A perpetual motion machine, an internal dopamine generator. Yeah, would be great if it worked like that. The problem is in the chemistry of your body. A high concentration of dopamine makes your receptors less sensitive, which means that even if there is plenty of the chemical, your emotions will keep getting weaker. In response to those fading emotions, the body starts producing fewer hormones, and the feelings eventually wither away. That's why people who get together without a huge emotional blast at the beginning usually stay together longer. There is no attachment to extreme emotions. But those who experience bright, intense love right from the start hit the emotional ceiling on the very first dates, and after that the feelings can only fade. Now, here is the most interesting part. Why is it that one person always ends up suffering more in the end? If dopamine drops for both the woman and the man, the answer is yes, it drops for both partners at the same time. But there is always someone who sobers up faster, and that person takes the stronger position. What does that mean? It means they are no longer enjoying it the same way. For one of you, the relationship slowly turns into just a habit. This person becomes more irritable, sensitive, demanding, starts comparing you to someone else, doubting their decision, and now you understand where all the female drama, wants and demands come from. It's a compensation for lowered dopamine. Two people meet who dream about loving each other. It seems like they want the same thing, to get as much pleasure as possible right here, right now. But the more pleasure there is in the beginning, the fewer chances there are for both of you to keep experiencing that pleasure together later on. The only real question is who will cool off first and when will it happen. At that moment, you'll feel like the relationship is in danger, which makes you fall even deeper in love. Your emotions don't fade, on the contrary, they grow stronger. Any positive moment against the background of constant negativity, doubt, and anxiety brings a new burst of dopamine. So it's like coming in from the freezing cold, sitting down with a hot cup of tea, instant bliss. But if it weren't cold outside, that pleasure wouldn't feel so special. That's human nature. In winter, we wait for summer. In the summer heat, we wait for winter. But that's silly. Enjoy what you have. We crave what we don't have, or what we are afraid to lose. So, have you ever tried telling someone who's in love and has been rejected, why are you sad? There are so many options out there. Go meet someone new and stop suffering. They'll look at you with pain and anger in their eyes. So what kind of nonsense are you telling me right now? To someone in love, this feels almost like an insult. They might even stop talking to you afterward. To a person who's deeply in love, any other woman is like a tiny dopamine prize, like a plastic medal, not valuable. But the one who rejected him, that's a gold medal. That's why a man wants to attach himself to that woman. His dopamine levels might actually be higher than an athlete who's chasing an Olympic gold. So in other words, you want to make this specific woman love you back even more than an athlete wants to win the Olympics. If someone in love has a lot of dopamine, it doesn't always mean they feel good. Dopamine is about anticipation. When you are deeply in love and it's mutual, it feels amazing. But when you are in love and you get rejected, it's a brutal withdrawal on high dopamine with stress hormones spiking. You have no idea what to do to get what you want. The higher your expectations for pleasure from a woman, the more often you'll end up in a weak position. A love psychotic can only be happy for short periods of time. If you haven't found your muse yet, you feel bad because she doesn't exist. When you finally find her, you feel bad because you don't know how to keep her. Let's assume the two of you fall in love. There are only two options. Either you cool off first and start suffering from a lack of pleasure, or she's the one who starts pulling away. That's it. It's important to understand. In dopamine-driven relationships, the roller coaster starts sooner or later. One moment everything is great, the next it's awful, and the end feels near. To trigger hormone releases, you don't just need positive emotions. To experience intense pleasure, you also need a powerful disappointment. This applies to more than relationships. So a fisherman is only motivated by a good catch in the beginning. The moment he walks away empty-handed, he gets even more motivated. He'll say, that's it. I'm buying better gear and bait. Same with video games. Easy at first, then harder, you get frustrated and start buying upgrades. Same with the gym. At first, you do a little, then you get into it, and eventually you hit no progress. You feel empty. That's when you go and buy supplements or something stronger. So in other words, to keep dopamine high, you need periodic setbacks, disappointment. And the person who experiences that deficit starts investing more and more, expecting a bigger payoff later. In dopamine relationships, everything starts amazingly. The initial emotions create huge motivation, just like the first big catch or first win. But over time, the power always shifts to the more capricious, difficult, and destructive partner, because the one who controls the disappointment controls the emotional reward, and the one chasing emotions starts investing even harder, like an athlete with burning eyes spending a fortune on tubs and bottles, claiming the boost muscle growth. So the moment you start chasing a dopamine prize in the form of a woman, you give up control because the reward depends on her, not you. Love, psychosis, almost always comes with the uniqueness trap. So ask someone in a love psychosis what makes his story different from others, and you'll instantly get a flood of dramatic nonsense like you don't understand, this only happens once in a lifetime. So in relationships, there are really only 5 dopamine peaks. The first one is the bright emotional moment that can happen even before the relationship starts, because it's simply about dynamics. A girl rejects you or hints at rejection, and suddenly it feels like there is some huge reward hidden behind that obstacle. Your brain interprets it like this: if you win this specific girl's affection, you'll get a massive dopamine payoff. In that state, a guy practically foams at the mouth and starts begging, Maria, I need her to fall in love with me. Her. Do you understand? And this is the moment when a man romanticizes a woman to the extreme. By the way, in the distant past, you could afford to romanticize a girl. You could admire her endlessly, because back then a woman had no say in the matter at all. You would arrange things with her parents, they'd agree that their daughter would marry you, and that was it. She was yours for life. After that, you could crank your romantic feelings up to the maximum because she wasn't going anywhere. But back then, the man held absolute power in the relationship. Everything was in his hands. In today's reality, you don't have any power at all. On the contrary, you are placed in a situation where your emotional state depends on her mood and her desire, and her mood can change almost daily. That's why wanting to love a woman is not enough. Otherwise, you just become another rattle boy or rattle toy, another Pokemon. If you want to control a relationship, if what matters to you is your personal ability to influence a woman's feelings, someone right now is probably saying, so Maria, that's why I clicked on this video to learn. So go on, tell me what to do. You're sure? All right. If you want to make someone specific fall for you, bring them back, revive the feelings, you will never succeed. Why? Because you have zero room for error. You are betting everything on the woman, which means you'll constantly be afraid of screwing up and doing something wrong. You've seen models walking down the runway, right? All she has to do is walk 15 steps forward, 15 steps back. What's difficult about that? It's the simplest thing in the world. Yet, models still manage to trip and fall all the time. Why? Because the cost of mistake is too high. Their legs literally get tangled by the fear of messing up, which spikes their stress levels. So think about it. If a professional model, someone who practices every day, can't walk 15 steps normally under that kind of pressure, how are you, in the middle of a love-induced tremor, planning to make someone fall for you? You still have to improvise with the woman, talk to her, and handle stressful moments. That's why, until you lower the importance of this woman to just another ordinary person, you'll keep tripping over yourself. And here is something that might surprise you. She has also been rejected, ghosted, ignored, underestimated. Someone couldn't even be bothered to like her photo. But as long as you believe she's the one, the special one, you'll keep tripping like a nervous runway model. Being able to control a relationship, take the stronger position, or make someone fall for you is only possible when you have doubts. I'm not sure if I should take my ex back. I'm not sure if I should start a relationship with this girl. I'm not sure if this particular woman is even right for me. Doubt is the privilege of the strong. A person with doubts is the one who leads the relationship. And the one in the weak position, he never doubts anything. So, I'm not saying that you should show a woman, I have doubts about you. No, I'm talking about your internal state, how you feel the situation. But this creates a vicious cycle. If you fall in love and ride the dopamine high, you don't doubt yourself, and that puts you in a weak position. But if you decide to be firm and lower her importance in your mind, you lose the dopamine reward. So let's say she ends up failing for you and comes back. And then what? There is no wild rush anymore. It feels completely ordinary, like finding a parking spot in the city center. So nice, fine. And in that moment, you start realizing relationships built on dopamine are hollow. Here is a warning. So you cannot fake indifference toward a woman without her noticing. I know a woman who once told her child, so when you lie to mom and dad, a star lights up on your forehead. We instantly see when we are being lied to. So the next day, the child comes up, says something and covers his forehead with his hands. That's basically how a man in love looks when he tries to hide his feelings from a woman. Conclusion? The higher the dopamine, the higher the stress. So, what do? Find reasons why a relationship with this particular woman isn't as perfect as it seems. You must evaluate her, not the other way around. How does a man in love act? Let me give you an example using a used car. Instead of carefully inspecting it, he falls for the car immediately. Wow, the shape is great, the leather is so soft, only one previous owner. More bad, not bad at all, yes? That's usually how it goes. Any doubt about a partner's perfection uh, at the start is actually useful. It helps you sober up, reduces stress, and you don't lose anything. If the person is truly suitable for a relationship, a little early skepticism won't hurt. But if there are serious problems, so you protect yourself. The second dopamine peak is the start of the relationship. The first 6 months, sometimes longer. This is the time when you enjoy each other. And once again, you naively believe this will last forever. Finally, you found her, and you think, so why did Maria say I'd never fall for a good girl? Well, I did, and things will be different with her. The third dopamine peak is when the woman's agreement or reciprocation is hard-earned. You put in effort, and finally she says yes. To dating, moving in together, or marriage, you get an instant hormonal reward. Think of the feeling at the end of a soccer match when you score the winning goal, and now multiply that by 10 and stretch it over a longer period. That's roughly the sensation you feel, pure thrill. But here is the catch. If your agreement to be in a relationship or live together gives you joy and excitement, that's actually not a great sign. It means you were doubting her decision and just wanted to lock her down so she wouldn't leave or be wooed by another man. That position has nothing to do with being a leader. The fourth dopamine peak, the woman starts pulling away from you, arguing, creating tension. Unconsciously, you realize there is a serious risk of losing your dopamine boost, and you begin clinging, panicking. This moment can be called a turning point. Your internal state at this exact moment will completely determine the future of your relationship with her. And there are only two possible outcomes. First scenario, the woman acts difficult, distances herself, creates tension, and you're immediately lower the value, quality, or rating of your relationship with her. Call it what you will. You don't need to argue, clash, or leave instantly. This is a process that happens inside your head. There might be barely noticeable external signs, but trust me, she'll notice them and over time will move closer to you. At this moment, and this is key, you are the one in control. You'll decide whether to restore the trust to its previous level or if she needs to earn it. Again, we see that influencing a woman comes only through your internal state, not through acting or pretending. The second scenario, which is more common, the woman pulls away, but the value of communicating with her doesn't decrease, it increases. No advice or tips can help here. Imagine a log lying on the ground. Can you walk across it? Sure, maintaining balance isn't hard. But when you are in love with a woman, She can influence not just your dopamine, but also your stress hormones. She can make you feel fear, anger, hurt, jealousy. And now imagine the log isn't on the ground, but high up in the mountains, with 1,000-foot drop below. Can you walk across? No. Just visualizing it makes your palms sweat. In this state, even giving advice is risky because the person will likely fall. The fifth emotional peak in dopamine-driven relationships is the final disconnection from the source of pleasure, a painful breakup. And this is precisely why you can't extract dopamine from hobbies, but shouldn't rely on it from relationships. Think of a fisherman chasing a trophy fish. Often he doesn't even need the fish. It's about the emotions, the thrill. But the fisherman can't be kicked off the lake, barred from fishing, or have his gear stolen. Fans of hobbies aren't lied to a specific place or object. Gamers can download a new game. Athletes can go to another gym or switch sports. Fishermen can move to another lake. But dopamine in a relationship is always tied to one person. Why is that? Because at the start of a dopamine-driven relationship, everything seems perfect. Everything begins easily, effortlessly. The initial dopamine comes from the unpredictability of each partner's actions. You can simply meet, hang out, and enjoy yourself. That's often how it is. And it probably happened to you. The tension exists because the partner is not fully known. The actions are unpredictable. Neither the man nor the woman has guarantees of lasting love or of loyalty. Maybe someone will lose interest, get disappointed, cancel a date. In this uncertainty, dopamine spikes. But what happens next? You start studying each other, becoming predictable. And no matter what, dopamine-driven love begins to fade. The takeaway: you can only fall for a woman who has rejected you, left you, ignored you, or creates tensions. Or, and this is very important, a woman who potentially could do that and you know it, and or in other words, the relationship might be fine for now, but you sense that one day she might break free. So, why don't people don't understand this? Doesn't anyone want to break this vicious cycle? The answer is wanting is not enough. So ask any man, do you want to hold a strong position in a relationship? Be the one in charge. Almost everyone will say, of course I do. But that's not true. Everyone wants to be rich. Few want to work for it. Everyone wants to be a leader. Few want to take responsibility. Everyone wants to be in a strong position, but few are willing to give up the feeling of being in love, and giving it up is necessary. When we talk about a change in worldview, we are not talking about slightly lowering someone's value, not about approaching a date like a hard bench press. We are talking about a complete radical shift in priorities. So, by the way, being in love is already listed in the International Classification of Diseases. Symptom-wise, it's a severe neurosis. That's all. And what does a person suffering from neurosis do? They deny it. Humans naturally rationalize their deviations. This is a defense mechanism, finding justification for every desire and action. There are people who collect feces. Yes, they exist, and they can spend hours explaining the benefits of such a hobby. Once a behavioral test was conducted, a person was put into a hypnotic state, and it was observed that under hypnosis he suddenly opened his umbrella. He didn't remember doing it. When he was brought out of hypnosis, shown this video, and asked why he did it, he started explaining why he suddenly needed the umbrella. So he rationalized something he didn't control. We are all prone to this. We tend to rationalize impulsive and illogical actions. You see this all the time. Someone does an obvious stupid thing and then explains it to themselves. The same happens with being in love. At first, love doesn't look crazy. A process of accumulating thoughts, feelings, and emotions happens. First positive, later not so much. That's how thousands of neural pathways connected to this woman are formed. And then you realize you don't want to live without her. There have also been studies showing that instant love requires more frying. So most likely adrenaline is involved too. In short, the feeling of being in love is a strong stressor. One effect, hyper attention to the smallest details. So, for example, a person can remember exactly what their partner wore on the first date. This detail is irrelevant for the future, but stress is stress. It makes insignificant things seem important. And when you put it all together, norepinephrine, adrenaline plus dopamine, the anticipation of seeing her, you get a powerful attachment to the person. In this state, every movement, every glance of the other person feels significant. Stress sets the stage for falling in love almost out of nowhere. And isn't it with these feelings that men usually go on dates? Excited but a little scared. Dopamine plus adrenaline. Aren't those the emotions you feel after a woman pulls away or rejects you? Norepinephrine acts like anger. Adrenaline feels like fear of loss. You're in an altered state of mind. Your rational thinking kicks in much later when you try to explain your own impulse to yourself. Now, if you ask a man, hey, why do you love her? Most of the time he can't give a coherent answer. Well, I love her because she's special. And he doesn't even realize that all her specialness isn't her personal qualities. It's the hormonal cocktail flooding his bloodstream. Okay, let's say you even come up with a few reasonable reasons to treat your partner well, to be with her, why you chose her. But what's the value in all that if she's not with you? If she rejected you, stopped loving you, let you down, lied, disrespected you, left you, or you fight, why do you keep fighting and loving in that case? Because it's not about those female qualities you're naming. That's a lie. It's about neural connections, the love you've built inside your head through stress and uncontrollable desire. And the woman merely had the traits you used to trigger yourself. Her personality is just decorative justification, so you could go crazy. She simply had the optimal input parameters to get your mind racing. In reality, your beloved doesn't even meet all the parameters you were looking for. She is not your ideal at all. There is even a study on this. An experiment was done on dating sites with 200,000 participants. First, they were asked to write a list of qualities they wanted in a partner, men and women alike. Then researchers just observed who they actually chose to date. It turned out people didn't start with candidates who perfectly matched their desired traits. On the contrary, people listed one set of criteria but went on dates with completely different people. Scientists speculated this might be curiosity and the desire to try something new. But we know the truth. Something new, the novelty element, that's dopamine. Dopamine again, even here. The conclusion is simple. Falling in love is neither the woman's merit nor her fault. It's your own personal psychosis. So if your feelings are tearing you apart, it's not fate, it's not destiny. She's not your soulmate and there is no magic in it. You simply flipped your self-control switch at some point. After that, psychological, biochemical, and mental changes happened in your body. The dopamine trap clicked, and that's it. You are already explaining to yourself why you fell for this woman. Many will say, okay, Maria, I get it. Love psychosis is bad. What do you suggest instead? I hear this a lot. Men say normal relationships and normal women don't attract them. And what did you do to make them attractive to you? That's right, nothing. We're all potential love psychotics. If you want a normal relationship, you'll have to work for it. First, you need to at least take a time out. No relationships. In some cases, a break of even several years is necessary to calm the patience inside yourself, to let everything settle, to forget what love psychosis feels like, and to stop comparing intense dopamine fueled adventures with normal, healthy, kind relationships. Second, abstinence. This is the only tool that mentally toughens you in the realm of relationships. So, practically the only one. Men are constantly told about self-improvement. Go to the gym. Okay, you bench press 200 pounds and what? That won't help you with a woman. You won't be dealing with physical pain with her, but emotional pain, and you have to prepare for that separately. And even dumber piece of advice is go earn money. Okay, you earned it, and what? Now the temptation are even greater. Refusing dopamine tied to money and opportunities becomes even harder. But the absolute worst advice is love yourself. That just makes you more egocentric, doing whatever you want. And that's exactly what a love psychotic does. A self-absorbed person is extremely vulnerable to dependence on others because they feel any rejection intensely. Want to make an egoistical person fall for you, just let them down once. They'll never stop chasing you. So self-love is literally a step toward the abyss. Only abstinence strengthens self-control. Third, practice. Interact with different women, not just one random girl, but many, to understand the full range of personalities and situations. Once you realize that there is no such thing as feminine mystery, uniqueness, or secrecy, you won't have to strain so hard to control your infatuation. It will simply stop happening. Fourth, after all the previous steps, choose a suitable woman for a family and apply the actions that raise attraction toward her to a healthy, reasonable level. In conclusion, here is the key point. There is a popular misconception that relationships involving manipulation are doomed to be unhappy or will inevitably fall apart, or that it's impossible to make someone fall in love through strategy. Of course, it's possible. Why does it usually fail? Because 98% of people don't understand what they are doing. For example, someone goes online and reads a copywriter's article. A copywriter is a person who really knows nothing about this. Their job is just to copy someone else's text. So they read something. Oh, they wrote about closer father. Or someone goes on YouTube, opens a random person's video from a year and a half ago, which just rehashes someone else's content. And the viewer thinks, okay, I now possess very valuable knowledge, I know how to use emotional contrast, but what do you really know about it? Tell me, what do you know? Well, you have to get close, then pull away, and the girl will fall in love. And you, Maria, said the same thing. No, I didn't say that. I said something completely different. But that's not the point. You don't understand female typology. So besides a random positive outcome, random, I want to stress, you won't get anything. Because if at first you meet a woman who fights for leadership in the relationship, she will immediately start pressing you. She'll conduct the conversation so that you're slightly in a secondary role, so that you pretend to give in a little. Well, just a little, somewhere, somehow, you bend a bit. Here, you start applying all the knowledge you've gained, but nothing works. The conversation just ends without results. You don't know the right approaches. And in this case, it simply don't work. A completely different approach is required. Then you think, Okay, maybe this girl was just a little strange. I'll try again. Next, you meet a woman with what's called an avoidant attachment style. At first, everything is great. You've had a few dates, maybe even months together, and then suddenly she snaps. She starts creating problems, doubts her feelings, ends their relationship. You don't understand what's happening. You did everything right, but for this type of a woman, the threat of becoming dependent might be more significant, a bigger danger to her than ending things immediately. You don't know what to do. Then the man gets frustrated and says, okay, manipulation doesn't work, I'll just be more straightforward. Then he meets a dopamine driven woman who, after a few dates or even just a few messages, immediately realizes it'll be boring with this guy and cuts him off. In the end, a completely disappointed man concludes, I guess no one can help me. This is a very common scenario, but the valuable knowledge he could gain and the skills he could acquire are right in front of him. Thanks everyone for watching.